to becoming a circular economy. We have the goal to become climate neutral in 2050, and within the EU we've been pushing to actually also push the goal of the EU to make it more ambitious. I think Amsterdam is an excellent example of implementing circular initiatives. And as the embassy, we're also very happy that we can participate in these webinars of ReThink Ukraine. So thank you very much.
Wow, that was really short. Thank you very much, Ernst, for your support and for keeping this that short. So it means we haven't lost any time now. Thank you for your words, and we really appreciate what the Netherlands is doing in the EU and how it is leading by example in terms of especially circular cities. Now, Marieke, shall I give a little bit of Kiev context first, or you can start immediately and then we discuss something afterwards? Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, and thanks so much for inviting me. And I apologize for taking a little bit of time. Because we have some technical problems right here. I thought that my presentation was forwarded and somehow now it's too big. But actually, I think I can start without the presentation, or you can start with the presentation that I sent you before, and let's hope if we can add the other part, which is which needs to be added in a moment. But I can also start because I'm very enthusiastic about the story of Amsterdam's journey towards becoming a circular city, but also a donut city, which I do think is a little bit more than just a circular city. And this is our story. Amsterdam has been working on the ideas of becoming a circular city since 2015. We have a program, we have many projects where we're looking at how can we focus on recycling, how can we focus on reusing, how can we make sure we have less raw materials and use old materials, but also how can we focus on maybe using less. And it has been a very successful program because we've had a lot of innovations where we saw how we could better recycle, how we could better reuse our products. And maybe one of the most important things by doing so, also to lower our CO2 emissions. As was already said, Amsterdam, the Netherlands wants to be climate neutral by 2050. And we want to have 49% less of emissions by 2030. And Amsterdam wants to reduce its emissions by 55% by 2030. So our ambitions are a bit higher than of the Netherlands, the government. Can I have the next slide, please? So we were working on two things. We were working how to become the one before. Yeah. How to become a climate neutral city and how to become a circular city. And if you see on this slide how much emissions the city is having just by having its raw materials in its organic waste, its consumer goods, the built environment, it's a huge amount of CO2. So a circular city is definitely helping by becoming a climate neutral city. But there was one thing that we were worrying about, and that was that if you only focus on your CO2 emissions, if you only focus on recycling goods or in reusing goods, then actually you don't do anything about the system that is actually asking for more and more and more. We have an economy that is based on growth. And for growth, we need to produce and consume in a way that we need more and more and more all the time. So actually we produce, while our goal might be to recycle and to reuse, the system that we have, the economical system that this almost our complete world is living in, is a system where growth is needed. So you need to consume more and more all the time. We have products, we consume things that are actually not meant to last, which would be good in a circular economy, but actually they are meant to be broken very soon, because that makes you buy a new thing and buy a new thing. So our whole production and consumption system is actually exploiting our planet, because all the time we need new materials. We pollute the world more because we have the CO2 emissions that actually if we want to make those products. We pollute the rivers, for example, by using the cotton and dyeing and coloring the cotton in order to make all the clothes. I think we all can remember the time where actually you would have a new fashion every year or every half a year. Right now we have a new fashion every 3 months. Every 3 months you are told you need to go to the shop again and buy something new because you need to look fashionable and you need to have something more. Our whole consumption is based on that. So we need to do something not only about our CO2 emissions, not only about a circular economy, but also to change something with structure that lies beneath the fact that we're producing and consuming in a way that is exploiting our earth. And actually, if you look very good, it's not only exploiting our earth, we're not only polluting our air and our soil, but we're also exploiting people. Because all these products that we need all the time are quite often made by labor exploitation or even slavery. So actually what we're doing, our economy is the price of our cheap products, of our fashion, of all the goods that we want, actually is not paid by us, but the real price is much higher, and it's paid by pollution. It's paid by the exploitation of people. And there was this idea that you need to change that, because we also see that while we're looking at how can we change, how can we stop climate change, how can we become climate neutral, many of the innovations, which I'm proud of, which are great, are quite often only there for the happy few. You know, it's great that Tesla is making electric cars, but who can afford a Tesla? It's great that we have many devices that are better for the climate, but who can afford it? So actually we need to change the structure, not just by changing fossil fuels to other fuels or normal products by sustainable products, but actually we need to change the system. We don't want to live anymore in what I would call a disposable society. So next, only look at these figures that you see right here on the slide on how to reduce all these megatons of CO2. We also have to look at our whole system in another way. And this is something that we in Amsterdam discovered in 2017, where the book Doughnut Economies was presented. And for me personally, it was some kind of moment there I thought something else is possible. And you know, I'm a bit older maybe than some of the people in this webinar, but I grew up in the times of Thatcher and of Reagan, where we were actually told there is no alternative. There is nothing else than this system. And when I read The Doughnut Theory by Kate Raworth, my feeling was there is an alternative. Actually, we can build an economy that is not, the purpose of this economy is not growth, but is thriving. The purpose of the economy is to make sure that we look at the well-being of people, and at the same time, we look at the ecological ceiling and make sure we don't surpass that ceiling. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we did is to have our circular strategy, which was the same as we had before. So a circular strategy where we actually see that we can make sure that we reuse all our materials, that we make sure that all the materials, for example, in a building, when you deconstruct it, are taken apart. They are become part of the what we call the materials library. So actually people can take the old materials for a new building. And this could apply not only to buildings, but to many things that make sure that if something is broken, that actually you can remake it. If something needs to be renewed, you can repair it, which is the same for shoes as it is for buildings, as it is for machines. We all know this extremely irritating moment where you have a machine where only one little button is broken and you have to throw away the whole machine because you can't repair it. So this is the circular strategy that we have in Amsterdam, and we are looking at 3 ways of doing it, where we see that we have most influence as a city government, not as a national government, but as a city government. And we're looking at our consumption goods, we're looking at food and organic waste, and we're looking at the built environment. But that's not the only thing. We want to do it in a way where actually we find what we call the sweet spots between the social foundation and the ecological ceiling. And that sweet spot, that's the donut. That is where economy is healthy, maybe not wealthy, but healthy. Healthy for our planet, but also healthy for the people living on that platform. So we have to make sure that the economy that we're following is making sure that everybody has good health, that everybody has a roof over their head, that there's social equity, that there's a political voice, that people can live in peace, that people have enough water, clean water, and enough energy, so that the social foundation of every person, both in Amsterdam, but also in the rest of the world, is being secured. And at the same time, that this economy does not surpass the ecological ceiling, so that we don't contribute to climate change, that we make sure that there's no biodiversity loss, that we don't pollute the air or the oceans, that we make sure that there's enough fresh water. This sweet spot, the donut, is something that helps us to create a circular economy, which is not only about the materials, but it's also very much about the well-being of people. Can I have the next slide, please? So we are the first city donut, because when we read the Doughnut Economy by Kate Raworth, we thought this is the way we want to make sure that our circular strategy in Amsterdam, but actually the economy of Amsterdam is being made. So we asked Kate, if we were a donut right now, what would it look like? How would our donut look like? And she looked at 4 things for us. So she made a donut for our city, and she looked at 4 things for us. She looked at this social foundation, both on a local level as well as on a global level. And she looked at our ecological ceiling, both at a local level and at a global level. And what you see is that Amsterdam is not that different from other big prosperative cities. So we're quite okay on the social level for our own inhabitants, but we are sure that for the social level on the rest of the world, we are exploiting. People in other parts of the world are being exploited because of our consumer behavior. We know that. We also know that when you, for example, look at CO2 emissions in Amsterdam, it's huge. Like many other wealthy cities, we pollute enormously. Our air quality is quite okay, and that's because since many years now, we're trying to have less cars in the city and move around by public transport and by bike and on foot. So we see that the air pollution is actually going better right now. But if you see at what we're doing to the rest of the planet, for example, fishing, for example, dirty, what comes out of the ships, which is being wasted on the seas, but also pollution in what should be the fresh water for other people in other parts of the world, which are polluted by the producing of consumer goods that we as people of Amsterdam want. But looking back, maybe a little bit on this social part of Amsterdam itself. Yes, we are a wealthy city, and yes, we're doing quite okay. But one thing is very strange, which is part of our economical system as we have it right now. The houses in Amsterdam are extremely expensive, which makes, if you look at our BPD, we have a good one. Makes us a wealthy city if you have expensive houses, then you are a wealthy city. But you have to think, are we a wealthy city? That so many people can't afford a house? Actually, you're not a wealthy city because you might have a lot of money, or there's a lot of money going on in the city, but we're not able to provide adequate housing for everybody who wants to live here. So this city donut that Kate has made for us is a mirror. It shows us that the way we are living, the way we're consuming, the way we're producing, actually what it means for our footprint on the rest of the world, but also on the city of Amsterdam. So these four perspectives that we are working on, we asked Kate to make this mirror for us, but we also are using it to monitor. So we set this strategy right now, and this is what we will work with for the coming years. And then Kate comes back, and then she will monitor, and then she will see if actually the strategy that we're doing is making us perform better on those four perspectives. So not only for the city of Amsterdam, but also for the rest of the world. And I think that's the most important things. If you're looking at climate change, if you're looking at a circular economy, it's not only the effects on the here and the now, but very also much on our children, our grandchildren, and then people in other parts of the world where we know who suffer much more from climate change than we as a wealthy city do. You know, we are the Netherlands, we're the country of dikes. If the sea level rises, we can build more dikes. But we know in many parts of the world, look at, for example, Southeast Asia, people can't afford to buy more dikes. And they will see their fertile lands either become deserts or being flooded by the higher sea level. So I do think the donut economy also puts a lot of responsibility on high-income countries to see what actually the price is for their wealthy and healthy living. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is a little bit how we built it up. It's a city donut, which is kind of working on our circular strategy. Our circular strategy is full of projects, projects that are about innovation, projects that are about how to do it together to make sure that we have less food waste, to make sure that we consume in a different way, to make sure that we repair and reuse in a much better way. This is the implementation that we're working right now on in last year and this year. And then Kate will come again and she will have her monitor on the donut. Then if you're looking at how do you want it, because a lot of people often ask, what can we do? What can residents do to become more climate neutral or to have circular city? And there's much you can do. But actually, I do think if we put it on individuals alone, then we come with this, what I was saying before, for a lot of people, it's very expensive. Then you come in some kind of eco-elite, as we call it, people who can afford to be sustainable and people who can't. Because right now the system is that polluting stuff is cheaper than sustainable stuff, whether it is your fuel or whether it's the products you buy or whether it's the food you buy. So we do think that there is a huge responsibility for the government. So the role of the city, and unfortunately I can't show this slide, but I will tell you. So what we see as the role of the city is to make sure that we set the right example, and we do that through procurement. So we make sure that we invite the companies who want to work in a circular way, who want to use less CO2 emissions, that we make sure that we hire them instead of others. So we put that in our tenders to make sure that we have them. That we stimulate innovation and cooperation between businesses and institutions. For example, our harbor, which is now the place which is the storage of fossil fuels, whether it's coals or oil or gas, it's all there in our harbor. And our harbor said in 2050, we want to be also completely climate neutral. And we want to create an ecosystem of sustainable and circular businesses. So what the waste is of one of the businesses could be the resources for another business. And this is how our, so the plastics that you normally would throw away would be the new materials for another company that is also there. We want to set standards and impose rules. For example, one of the things which maybe we can't do as a city, but we're urging our national government to do that, is to have the responsibility of a producer, that actually what you produce should be able to be dismantled. Instead of throw away and buy a new thing, that a producer has to make something that can't be broken, but that can always be repaired. One of the big things about the circular economy is the right to repair. Actually, national governments and the EU could impose that on companies to have this standard on make sure that it can be repaired and make sure that we all know what's in your product. For example, in plastics, that can be quite difficult. Sometimes one product would have 4 different plastics, so you can't recycle. So those are the things that a government can do. We can also stimulate front runners to make sure that that they have a better position. People who actually want to do something else, that they have a better position. And at the last thing, what a city government can do is to influence, as I said before, the national government and the EU for a level playing field, which is a producer's responsibility. Another one, which is extremely important for a circular economy, is to make sure that the taxes on raw materials, on raw resources, materials will go up, and the taxes on labor will go down, which is also very good for the economy because we can have more jobs within Amsterdam. And right now in the corona crisis, where so many people are losing their jobs, that would be a great advantage, that people can actually, who are losing their jobs right now in the old economy, can find jobs in the circular economy. And in the circular economy, we need all kinds of jobs. We need the people who innovate. How can you actually do all this recycling, this reusing, this repairing? But at the same time, we need people who are actually doing it, who are taking things apart, to make sure that you can reuse it. So there's a huge amount of employment in the circular economy, but there it's important that the taxes are lower on employment and higher on resources. Because right now, for a producer, it's so much cheaper to buy new products which are dug somewhere on the world in a mine, then shipped all over the world to Amsterdam to make something new, than to recycle something old. So it's the system is not working. We need to change that, for example, by tax. So this is the role of the government, the things we can do as a City of Amsterdam. Then we have the role of the businesses. For the businesses, we can ask them to focus on innovation and develop new business models and to design circular products instead of disposable products. And to make sure that there is a responsibility with the producers, with the businesses, to collect and on a high quality process the products after they are using it. For example, we have this system where you can, if you buy a plastic bottle of, let's say, Coca-Cola or Fanta or whatever, then you have to bring it back and you get a little bit of money back. So when you buy the bottle, it's a bit more expensive and to 20 cents, and you get it back when you return it. Many producers don't want it because it's a hassle, but actually that's the best way to make sure that we can recycle and reuse, by actually not throwing it away, but to make sure that you can use it again. And there you have the role of the residents, which is of course also there, because we ask them to separate their organic and other waste to make sure that we have different streams. We encourage them to make more sustainable choices, which makes sure that we have to make sure that those sustainable choices are there and are affordable. And I think the other thing is what we ask for residents is to see what they can do within their own neighborhoods, because most of the times great innovation starts in neighborhoods where people can do something for themselves, where they can actually see what is happening and how they can put their thing on changing the world, because that is education your children, to make sure that actually people see it happen instead of something that is happening in another country or in a big factory, but actually to bring your shoes to the repairman, bring your stuff to the repairman, make sure that you have a place where you put your organic waste and make it into fertile grounds again. I think that could make a lot of people very enthusiastic about what there is they can do. Can I have the next slide, please? So all the different projects that we have go from the repair cafes, where actually people who don't have a job right now are working to repair the stuff of other people. Quite often also people with little money, where they can bring their stuff and they can see how other people are making it. We have right now a completely circular and sustainable neighborhood on the water, on boat houses, where actually they have their own small grid. So it's a neighborhood where they don't need to have energy from the companies anymore, because they make everything themselves. So they made this little, let's say, example neighborhoods that we can then copy if it works to other places. But of course, we have many more things. Lots, for example, on textiles, we have a denim deal right now where the big companies are based in Amsterdam have promised to have at least 20% of old materials in new jeans. So they're using old jeans to make new jeans. So it's a huge amount of, it's 200 projects that are all working on a local level to show that a circular economy is possible and something that we can actually do. Again, these are the projects. Next to it is the impact, which then is seen in if we're actually also, with all these projects, are also adding to a healthier Doughnut and actually a better social foundation and a safe ecological ceiling. Maybe for as one of my few last remarks, something that we immediately, when COVID broke out, of course, everybody was scared that because of this big COVID crisis, we would forget about the other crisis, the climate crisis that is not waiting for us to solve Corona, but is actually going on in the same terrifying speed as it has been in the past few years. So we were looking at how can we fight COVID and at the same time, or the consequences of COVID, and at the same time not forget about the sustainable goals that we have. One of the things, can I have the next slide, please? This is actually not something that we've done, but this shows the innovation power of a lot of people in business, how you can actually keep on doing things when we have Corona. This is a restaurant that made another way of serving their clients. But we as Amsterdam, we knew that there was a lot of children who would need to have online education. And in the house, there were maybe not enough laptops for all children. Or people who were lonely and actually didn't have all the devices to have online conversation with their family or friends. So we started to collect old laptops from the city government, but also from other people. We had them refurbished, and then we gave them away to people together with some internet connection. We gave them away to people who could not afford it. So here you have two sides of the donut. We recycled the laptops, so we didn't have the electronic waste. And at the same time, we could support people who were lonely, who were isolated, who didn't have the money for their children to have online education. The other thing that we did was that we saw that a lot of farmers in the neighborhood of Amsterdam couldn't sell their products anymore. So there was a huge amount of food that was going to waste because the big companies wouldn't buy the potatoes in order to make French fries anymore. So we had all those potatoes waiting for nobody. At the same time, we saw people in Amsterdam losing their jobs and becoming in a financial difficult situation. So we set up this project, which is called Farmers for Neighbors, where actually we would buy the products from the farmers and then sell it to a very reasonable low price to people who were suffering from income loss because of COVID. So immediately we tried to see how we could use the Doughnut to fight COVID and at the same time not to lose focus on our sustainable goals. Maybe, Roman, for now, this is a presentation on Amsterdam and the Doughnut, and how we're using our circular strategy to become a Doughnut city. And maybe to put one thing, because a lot of people are saying, aren't you proud that you are the first Doughnut? And how can you keep on this position of being the first Doughnut? But actually, a circular economy cannot do it alone. Yes, we have smaller supply chains and shorter supply chains, and it's more resilient, but still you need more cities to become Doughnut cities in order to make a complete circular strategy to become a Doughnut economy. So it's not about being the first or being the best. It's actually, we hope that we can, together with other cities, with other countries who want to implement the Doughnut, actually have a more connected economy, which is connected with others, but resilient, because we don't have all these long supply chains. So it's an invitation.
Thank you so much. This really sounds impressive. And yes, when we were selecting the topic for this event, Christian, your colleague, told me, no, we do not want any words that would underline our leadership in this process, because this is not a competition. And I'm really amazed by your rhetoric in this case. Thank you so much, Marieke, for this inspiring, I would say, speech. And of course, it touches a lot of topics, and we are moving to discussion. We have dozens of questions already, but let me come back to the previous slide, because I think, if I can, why? Yes. Isn't it Frans Timmermans on the upper photo in the yellow t-shirt?
It's not.
Yeah, I thought so.
No, this is actually what we call a repair cafe, and it's a place where people can bring their broken products, and people who are, clever with their hands are repairing it for you, and it provides employment for people who might have lost their jobs, so they can actually repair stuff. And it also makes sure that you don't have to buy something new if your product is actually not broken. Just one little thing is not working anymore. And I noticed that a lot of people, whether you're poor or rich, where you have enough money or not, people hate it when you have to throw things away just because one little thing is broken. Yeah. But actually, we notice that things are made to be broken, because that's what keep our linear economy going. That's what needs to change.
Yeah. That's what business model used to be, and it still stays. Why I'm asking, because it's funny, because this guy really looks like Frans Timmermans, and secondly, I just recalled that during the stakeholder conference on circular economy in Brussels, we were present there, and he said in his opening speech that it is not normal that I can buy a new toaster for something like 15 euros. And in order to repair my toaster, I have to pay something like 25 euros. This is not something that gonna lead us to a circular economy, and we have to change it. So I really recall those words, and now I see almost him in the repair cafe, and I thought finally he came with his toaster. But okay, it's not him. You've touched enormous amount of topics and interesting concepts, and of course the most interesting thing in terms of systemic change is how do you deal with the central government? Because we in Ukraine, we have, I think it's relevant for all, almost all countries. How do local governments and their initiatives interact with central governments and their initiatives? And you even have also European Union level, so it has to all align together. We in Ukraine, we have decentralization reform going on right now. So basically a city of Kiev or some kind of regions that united together in a community, they can impose some certain rules, but they definitely cannot impose rules that are related to taxation or rules for their governmental purchases. So green procurement cannot be implemented only in some region, and not be implemented on other level, because the main component there is still the price. So in terms of your green procurement, in terms of your initiatives and speaking up about the change of taxation system, how is this process of cooperation with your central government is going on? And do you initiate these things and then, you are lobbying something, or how is it going?
It's both. What we try to do is the things that we can do ourselves to stretch that to the limit. If it comes to procurement and how we have our tenders, a lot is possible. So sometimes we have to ask for a specific, let's say. We know that the law is a little bit different, but we can ask the government if for this specific example, we can have permission to actually do it. So we ask that for a lot of innovative stuff. We ask, can we have this permission right now to do it in a little bit different way? Because we know we can serve so much more goals if we do it in a different way. So we stretch within our own rules, and then we stretch a little bit on the government rules. And the good thing is that we have to prove that it works. So, but then we prove it to, the national government, who asked us to do this and to show how it works. So actually, we have to do good, but also the government has to listen if we can show an example and say, actually, by stretching, by having these other ways of procurement, we have served more goals than we could have without this permission, so therefore also we kind of challenge the law and say, actually, if we do it in a bit different way, then we can actually reach out or have more success. So then maybe the law will be changed. So it's also the way of experiments that we can do. So what we can do ourselves, we do. What we can do by stretching and asking the government, we also do. And then of course we lobby, but we lobby while we're doing it. So actually, we have set our programs. For example, our roadmap to become climate neutral by 2050 and to reduce 55% by 2030. We have set out a roadmap, how we can actually achieve that. And there are a few buts and maybes in that roadmap where you say, here we need the government, but we can show them exactly where. So it's not like this big thing that, we need the government, but we say, okay, there's a lot of things we can do ourselves here and here and here. We need other legislation. So we can actually show it. So we're not waiting for the government to change the law, but we're actually going forward and say, okay, now we have this kind of obstacle, which is called the law, where we can't do it the way we need to do it. So we're not waiting, we're progressing ourselves, and we show, and the thing is that, of course, the national government also has quite ambitious goals for climate neutrality, but also to become circular. So as Amsterdam, we can say, we're happy to do this for you, to work on your goal, but you need to do something for us. And this is kind of the same thing that we say to Frans Timmermans, and say, yes, we want to do it, but please, the right to repair, something that he also said is important, is something that the European Commission has, or the Parliament has, a lot to say about, because this is this kind of responsibility of producers that actually the EU can impose on producers, to have this kind of idea that every product they make has to be dismantled, or it has to be made in a way that it can be dismantled or repaired, or that you know what's in it. So we do it ourselves, we stretch and we lobby, but we try to lobby with as much evidence as we can. Yeah. So not just because it's our ideology that we want this, but because we need this for this and this in order to reach this goal. By accident, it's also your goal. It's also what you want to achieve, and we're doing it for you.
Oh, that's great. You have this public commitment from your central government that has really set the vector, and you can really put it as, okay, you have said this, so please keep your word. Of course, in other countries where there is no circular strategy or there is no holistic approach and understanding, it's much more difficult. We also get very simple questions. Let's continue with this one. Where can we find all those projects? I think the person means all those 200 projects that you're mentioning. Is there any information online?
Yes, I could send you some of the things that you can maybe later share, because we have, especially our strategy and the Doughnut that Kate made for us are both online on our page of Amsterdam, amsterdam.nl, sustainability, and there it is. I'm not sure if we have all the 200 projects also in English. Because I know it's in Dutch. I'm not sure if it's also in English, but our strategy.
I think so. So. At least I read your circular strategy, so it was in English.
But does it also? Yeah, the strategy is in English, but I'm not sure if all the 200 projects are in there.
Yeah.
But the Doughnut is there. So on amsterdam.nl sustainability, you can find most of it.
Okay, great. Then next one, how do you gather measurement on circular jobs in your region?
Well, this is something that actually we're working right now on. So right now we're estimating how much jobs there actually are for circular jobs. So we found that 11% right now. So without all the big things that we're going to do, 11% of the jobs can be seen as circular jobs, and of course we want to increase that. So we have a survey going on right now on how many of the jobs we are part of the circular strategy can also be seen as added jobs, because it shouldn't be a replacement job, but it should be an added job. So we're doing this survey right now, and then we will monitor it yearly.
Okay. Great. I'm just reading a lot of another questions. Okay, how do you include circular economy goals in energy management system, or it is not included?
Well, of course, if you look at energy management, does that mean to reduce the amount of energy being used for products?
I can add only from my side. For example, you've showed a beautiful example of Sean's hips on the water, and maybe we can immediately touch another topic. And indeed, it has autonomous, independent smart grid where neighbors can trade electricity with each other, etc. On the other hand, this project was starting as a very democratic, open, and social project, and then later became, as you said, eco-elite project because of its value and the prices. So maybe the question was about how what kind of energy flows and sources do you see in the future for Amsterdam? And are you really managing the city's energy system in a circular way? But then I would also add this aspect of social justice, because of course might be easy to collect organic waste district by district and generate some biogas or even electricity from it. But other options can be more expensive.
Yeah, well, but maybe by this organic waste, there's an example in Amsterdam, in the southeast of Amsterdam, which is not an extremely wealthy part of Amsterdam, and there's a project going on right now where they want to have their own heat system being produced by organic waste. So they collect their own organic waste, but they're still building this heat system. And while working on that, they're also educating their neighbors about energy, because they say, well, of course, with all this organic waste, we can never have so much heat as we have right now with fossil gas, because that's easier. You know, you just turn on the radiator and it works. You just turn on your installation and it works. So actually, if we want to, by all our organic wastes and also by human waste, we want to have this digester, and to make it work, we also need to use less energy. So it also has an educational aspect on it, but it also has an employment aspect on it, because a lot of people are also living in houses which are not yet well isolated. So they still lose a lot of energy. So they have women working, women from the neighborhoods. They are sewing new curtains, which makes, and they are, you know, of heavy fabric. So they have an isolated function. So these women have a job by sewing the curtains. The houses are better isolated just before, you know, the housing company will actually do the complete renovation. And at the same time, they're building up their own system to have a neighborhood food waste and human waste digester in order to produce heat. So it's both educational and it's saving money for people with low incomes and a not very well isolated house. And it provides jobs for people who actually did not even lose their job, who never had a job. So people with what we call a distance to the labor market. Maybe another example of how energy, management of energy and circular products is working, is that we have a company in Amsterdam that is actually recycling concrete, which is very hard to do, but he found out a way where you can recycle concrete. And one of the things that is costing enormous amount of heat and therefore CO2 emissions is actually concrete. Because you have to, in order to make it, you have to heat it to, I don't know how many, thousands of degrees. So by recycling concrete, you reduce a huge amount of energy. So not only you don't have to make new ones, but you're also reducing the amount of energy. Two complete different examples of how energy and circular go together.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Also, I'm just checking. Yesterday, I discovered for myself this ranking from the project Drawdown about actions that can contribute to the climate change mitigation. And it's interesting to see that such a simple thing as insulation can contribute 3 times more savings of CO2 emissions than, for example, recycling system entirely. And alternative cement or concrete industry even more. So these are things we are not discussing almost, but they are more important than our typical recycling that is now running. Thank you so much. Now still many questions. Okay. Does municipality of Amsterdam collaborate with other cities within Netherlands and also abroad to share best practices? If yes, then what are the challenges in this process?
Actually, we do not have yet a system on or specifically on the Doughnut. So on circular, yes, we learn from each other, but I'm not sure. I would really have to ask if there's, you know, on a regular basis. What I see is that within the region of Amsterdam, we work together very much on circularity, where we want to make sure that we have these, what I said before, the shorter supply chains. So and where we can also see which part of the region is very strong one of the things that have to do with circular, that we don't have to do everything by ourselves, but actually that as a city or as a region, we can work together and have these smaller supply chains. But you don't, as Amsterdam is too small to have everything within its own borders. But it's more difficult to, if you do it with cities far abroad, then you have these long supply chains again, which are, use, materials from all over the world, as I said before, and transport from all over the world. So with other cities, especially if you're looking at cities where Kate is also working, the different Doughnut cities, we all the time, and also within the C40 network in Europe and with other, networks, we work together on how can we exchange ideas. But actually to build a circular network together, we do that within the cities in the region of Amsterdam.
Yes, thank you very much. And at this point, I have to ask you how much time do you still have? Because it's already 2 o'clock in Amsterdam, and we agreed for 1 hour session, and I have to ask if I may continue or not.
Yes, I have 10 more minutes, yes.
Okay, 10 more minutes. Then, well, let's move to questions again. Well, I think it's interesting for everyone. What have been the biggest obstacle in implementation so far? I think Lion Victoria means implementation of Doughnut and circularity.
I think the idea that circular, I think one of the problems that we still have is that a lot of people can't believe in anything else than a linear economy. So they say, oh yes, we can have circularity and still grow. And I'm not saying, I'm not from the school of degrowth, because I think some things will grow and thrive because of this new economy. So it's not about, the thing is, it's not about growth. It's not the most important thing. The most important thing as a city is to look well after your people in the city and look well after the planet. And I think the idea of growth and the linear economy is still so strong that it's quite difficult for people to understand, to do it in a different way. That might be a big obstacle, and to still see the sustainability. So our fight against climate change, our goal towards zero emissions by 2050, but also the circular economy as something that you do next to other things. That it's a plus on normal life, and it's a plus to do something sustainable, or it's a plus to do something circular, instead of changing your own behavior, person, as a city, as a nation, as humankind, and to replace it by something else. So we still have, or a lot of people still have today, this is the way normal things go, and on top of that we do something sustainable, or on top of that we do something circular, where actually we have to change our system. That is maybe the biggest barrier that we feel, and that obstacle that we feel. At the same time, it's interesting that sometimes people do very small things in a circular way and suddenly have the feeling, this is it. This is the big shift that I have to make, and I do it by something small. For example, by having something repaired and say, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to buy all this new stuff anymore, because actually it's stupid. So sometimes it's the small things that make those changes. But I think the big thing that we have to do right now is to make sure that circular is just not the responsibility for me as the deputy mayor on sustainability, but it's actually something that the deputy mayor on economics is doing, or the deputy mayor on labor employment is doing. And I think, more people are interested, but we're not there yet.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will, if you allow, move a little bit with the question also to our local context, because this is something I need this to start my question, because I don't know if you have been to Kiev before. Have you?
Yes, I have.
Yes. Okay. So this might look familiar to you.
Yes.
I think when Alicia Keys was singing this song about New York, it was actually in her mind or in her soul or in her heart was actually Kiev, because on the landscape quite far over the river, you see real concrete jungle. And our motto here in Kiev for recent years has been, there is nothing we can't do. So we can build anything, and it can be accepted by society, it can be legalized, any disaster can be built, any completely unhuman-centered residential area or office center can be ran and sold, and no problem, guys. And if you're wondering how this looks from closer perspective, it's something like this. You might think that this has been built 30 years ago, but no, it's just two years ago. In 2019, I think it was built as a residential area. And of course, it addresses even some positive things from the Doughnut, which is accessible housing for everyone. If everyone wants to live in the capital city of Kiev, then you're welcome to this house. And you can buy 1 square meter for less than 1,000 euros. So in total, you can buy an apartment for something like 30,000 euros. And you can live in the capital city of Kiev, which is cool. But of course, we also have to think about other implications that are associated with this strategy and with this, how to call it, system that everything is allowed. And besides architecture and ugly buildings, the same holds for illegal pipes for wastewater being digged somewhere just to the river, and emissions that are coming out of whatever chimney. And especially now in winter, we have terrible air quality because every garage or every industrial area is burning basically solid toxic waste to have heat inside. But then it really makes impossible to breathe outside. Sorry for this long introduction, but in the city like Kiev, with weak local government that is not bothered with these things, where would you start? Because we have started from a little bit of education, a little bit of innovations facilitation, a little bit of initiatives like pilot circular Kiev for one of the neighborhoods, and then city administration tells us, okay guys, you have wonderful project, but we cannot help you, just find the money, find partners, come back, and we will let you do it. And then, of course, the big question is where to find the money, where to find the partners in a developing country that perceives budgets in a different way than Amsterdam is probably perceiving. So what is your advice to us? Where do we start in this case?
Oh, wow. Well, actually, I do think that, and I know it's not easy, but I do think that starting things from ground level, from people sharing, for people wanting to change something, and I know that the Ukraine has shown that in history, that if people come together and people demand something, and people are risking their lives to make a change. We as Amsterdam in the past 400 years, we didn't have to do that. And in Kiev, you've shown that. So I do think there's a huge amount of wisdom in the crowds. There's a huge amount of power with the people who actually want to make a change. So I do think that by changing your own neighborhood by changing your own surroundings. You can set examples by doing things in a different way. I'm not saying it's easy, but I always think that that is the most powerful. If you hear me talking about the great examples that we have in Amsterdam for our circular ideas, it's never about the big innovations. It's always about what is happening on neighborhood level, where actually people, next to the fact that they, for example, share their products, that, for example, they collect their organic waste, or they have repair cafes, they're also building a new society, which is actually a society of solidarity, a society of comradeship, a society of, which might not be the best word in Ukraine, but a society of, people, sharing and caring for each other. And I do think the circular economy is that. It is not the where success is part of your how much you make or your job, but actually success is how well you are for your environment, how well you are for nature, how well you are for yourself. So I do think that, and as I said, I think the people of Kiev have shown that only in the past few years history several times, that actually if they want something, they can stand up for themselves. But actually to let that grow and thrive within neighborhoods, I think that can be extremely powerful. And I do think that the European Commission the European Union could also see that actually communities are standing up to thrive by themselves. Because I think that for a long time we were told that the economics that we were doing were kind of a natural science, but it's not. It's a social science. It's made by people and it can be changed by people. So I do think the core of a circular strategy, the core of a Doughnut, is the people working on it. And I'm pretty sure that the Commission is interested to see, especially in people in Eastern Europe, how they are creating a better environment, both on an ecological as well on a social level for themselves, if their governments is not supporting that at that moment.
Thank you so much. This sounds very inspiring, and indeed you've touched it very deep when you said about Kiev people. Have proven recently that we can change if we want something. It's indeed truth. The only thing is that normally it's been done by active minority, not by majority. But okay,
sometimes when you work in the neighborhood where active minorities can actually appeal to the maybe not inactive majority, but the people who have different problems, they have to struggle day to day to have enough food. And that's some of the examples that I've shown you, that actually they can work together. The active minority can actually do something that actually the bigger majority is changing their lives on a daily level instead of some kind of big ideology, but it's actually as these women in the southeast part of Amsterdam that have a job by sewing curtains for their neighbors, not for some kind of big company out there, but for their neighbors.
Yeah.
So therefore, just call me a dreamer, but
it's wonderful. That's why we are making this kind of webinars, and that's why we invited you, because I know you are full of energy, inspiration, knowledge and dreams, and that's important also for our participants from all over the world. I would like to thank you so much and invite you again to Kiev maybe one day, and of course we would be willing to cooperate sometime, somewhere, if possible. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we are sorry for delaying it a bit, but still a lot of people are with us, and we wish you a great evening. And yes, thank you also. Thank you for a lot of thank yous in the chat, Marieke. So It's wonderful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and it was great to be back in Kiev if it was only online. So I'm very much looking forward to actually come really to Kiev.
Hopefully. Thank you. Tot ziens. Dankjewel.
Bye.
Fijne avond.